Coming up on All About Android, it's a first for the show. It's just me and Ron. Just the two of us talking about Android news. We talk about ART, that's A-R-T, coming into the mainline fold, the new Snapdragon 888. I review the Acer Chromebook Spin 713, Google's Best of Play Awards. Ron gives us an update on his Google Play Music migration, your email, and so much more next on All About Android. All About Android is brought to you from LastPass Studios. You're focused on security, but are your employees? LastPass can ensure that they are by making access and authentication seamless, whether employees are working in the office or remotely. Visit lastpass.com/twit to learn more.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This episode of All About Android is brought to you by LastPass. Don't wait until the end of the year to get strong security. Start solidifying your cybersecurity strategy with the award-winning LastPass today. Go to lastpass.com/twit to find out how they can help you. And by Linode. Simplify your cloud infrastructure with Linode's Linux virtual machines and develop, deploy, and scale your modern applications faster and easier. Get $100 in free credit when you create your account today at linode.com/AAA or text TWIT to 474747 for a direct link to the offer. Hello and welcome to All About Android, episode 501, recorded on Tuesday, December 1st, 2020, your weekly source for latest news, hardware, and apps for the Android faithful. I'm Jason Howell.
And I'm Ron Richards. And Jason,
Yes.
After last week's epic 500th episode, earlier today, my wife asked me, she's like, so what do you guys have planned for your follow-up for the 501st episode? I was like, well, we're taking it back to basics.
Yes. And in fact, when I was thinking about this earlier, so basically it's Ron and me today. We have no guest. Flo is out. She's not feeling well today, so she asked to take the night off. And of course she gets that. Everybody should take some time, especially if you're not feeling well in this moment. So Flo, we hope you feel better. Keep us updated on that. But when I knew, when I asked you and you were game, I went to the schedule page to try and see, have there ever been any episodes of All About Android where it was just me and you and no one else? And I don't think that there has been an episode. It's strange for me to think that that's true, but I looked through there pretty deeply and I could not find any episodes where it was obvious.
I don't think we have done just the two of us. I don't think ever, to be honest. So this is a first, an All About Android first for the 501st episode. And if I thought more ahead, I would have been in Stormtrooper armor to go with the 501st Legion, who do the Stormtrooper cosplay. But, I just thought of that now. So there you go.
That's okay. You are forgiven. That would have been
Thanks.
Totally lost on me. I'd be like, it's not Halloween, dude.
Yeah.
I do remember there was one episode in the Eileen era where you were out and we didn't have a guest and it was just me and Eileen on the set at the news studio, back then the news studio, the Brick House. And I remember that being a particularly fun episode. So I'm really looking forward to doing this with you tonight.
Yeah.
I'm really surprised that this has not happened before. I think there was a long time with the show where I felt like it was our duty to always have a guest. And so every single night that we did a show, I felt like I needed to be armed with a guest of some sort. Now we've relaxed that a little bit. So it's perfect time.
And also it takes a lot for you or I to miss a show. I mean, I think I've got a pretty good run lately of not missing. And so nothing against Flo. She wasn't feeling well, so that's fine. It's just, but it is rare that if you're out, I'm not on, or if I'm out, or you know what I mean? You and I are always making sure it's covered. So yeah.
Yep.
Hey, I'll take it. So
indeed.
The Jason and Ron show. Here we go.
That's right. We got it. Just you and me, Ron. Just you and me tonight. Tackling. Burke, are you ready for it? The news.
News and witty puns are always a mainline module here on Android News.
Oh my gosh, that was great.
That was a Victor Trust fall.
Oh, okay. Victor hooked you up with that one. Okay, that did have a little bit of a Victor like content hook to it that I wasn't expecting from you, Burke. But regardless, I don't care who wrote it. You delivered it well.
Thank you.
Ron, you've got the first one.
I do, and I'm still on the schedule tab as I'm trying to figure out when we were on the show ourselves. So
you won't find it. I don't think it's happening.
So to kick off, finally, after weeks of there being practically no news, we are excited because we've got a bunch of news to talk about. And first up is Project Mainline, which is likely to get a new module in Android 12 and get a big one at that, ART, Android Runtime. A Google engineer revealed the plans in a comment within an AOSP build. This is the default runtime on Android since 2014, used by application and system services on Android, and basically it translates an app's code into instructions. And like other mainline modules, this would be a major component that is then updatable via the Play Store and not requiring a full system update. So like this is one of those underlying under the hood things that like could fundamentally change the way Android works, which is fascinating. And if you're into this sort of stuff, but then also in some other revolutionary Android discoveries, thanks to commits to the AOSP or the Android open source project, there are plans to allow fonts and emojis to be updatable outside of a full OS upgrade, which is how it's handled now. And note that these commits haven't been merged in yet, so it's impossible to know whether this change will make its way into Android 12. And it's probably safe to say this is better late than never, because you'd think that updating fonts and emojis wouldn't be something tied to a system update. But here it is. Yeah, and more and more we see things kind of disconnected from the system update, from the full version update, and being able to be updated via the Play Store and through kind of individual minor updates. Jason, this, I mean, is it hyperbole to say that this potentially changes a lot when it comes to Android?
It certainly moves in that direction. I mean, I've loved the promise of Mainline and before it Treble, which is, still active, but Mainline's the one that I get really excited about right now, the potential of that. For the last couple of years that it's existed, my concern or my worry when it was first introduced was, oh, okay, this sounds great in theory, but yeah, we'll see what really happens. But year after year, it seems like Google's really placing a lot of effort in tackling these core fundamental aspects of the Android operating system that are underlying everything that you do. And so it moves us closer to in a world where Android, is updatable by and large. Most of these really major core components are updatable through an update on the Play Store instead of requiring an OS update. And that's kind of the promise of Mainline. And I love that they're continuing to kind of build upon this. It really did feel necessary. It felt a little late because this is something that we've been complaining about for years. The fact that, updates are so reliant upon the OEMs or the carriers, everybody's got their hands in it, and that all slows everything down. This allows certain elements to speed up and to still be updated, and for people's phones to not be so reliant upon those system updates. Because like we know very well, a lot of OEMs don't care to do the big system updates. So at least we're getting some of these updates somehow. And I think ART, Android Runtime, that's a pretty major component of Android. That hints, I hope anyways, that hints at other major components being tackled in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like this, I want to say disenfranchised, but that's not the right word, but disengaging of these core components into the system update, where really what then you'll see is like when a new version is released, it is just the framework or the skeleton, and the components that go into that skeleton will be the ones that can be maintained from release to release. Which, when you think about it, is a much, it's a less bloated system update. It's a less, and you have the situation for more, because the whole trend in the OS over how many years now, maybe 2 or 3 years now, has been iterative updates, right? The days of a massive, like pretty much since once material design rolled out, I forgot what version it is, since that rollout, everything has been iterative and has been a slow evolution versus a major, everything's different now. And while everything is different now, is a lot more fun to talk about. Slow and iterative is probably safer and leads to better development. So this is probably a smarter decision. So,
and then on the flip side of this, emojis updatable without an OS update, which I mean, I could make jokes about that. Flo's not here to defend emojis, of course, although she probably would be if she were here. But still, that's just another aspect. If that ends up being, and I'm actually, this news doesn't necessarily point to that being updatable via Mainline, but it certainly points to it being updatable outside of the OS updates, which is the way it is now. So one could maybe, imply that that's maybe the direction that it's going, whether it's using Mainline or not. I still think that's a pretty good move to be, because I mean, and as we know, emoji is changing often. There's often changes to it. So having to wait for the OS update for people who love their emoji, that's going to be a big deal. Maybe they won't even notice, actually, but I would imagine they'd be happy that they have a new emoji right when it happens. Other news here, the Snapdragon Tech Summit digital event is happening. It's a 2-day event. It started today. And Qualcomm is now teasing its next major flagship chipset. So based on the numbering convention, the 855, 865, we would expect 875. No, they teased the 888. So it's unclear whether the 888 is like more premium than the 875 that they haven't announced yet, that I don't even know exists. I'm just, totally speculating. Or if 888 is kind of the replacement, the new one all in. We will find out about that, as we go further. But it includes the Snapdragon X65G modem. So that, of course, supports millimeter wave and sub-6. They actually demonstrated this by using a private 5G network and had two like race car drivers controlling race cars from more than a mile away. And doing it all based on this like live video streaming from the track over the private 5G network. So, those are the kind of things that make you that are designed to make you go, 5G really is amazing. Check out what it can do. Although that's pretty impressive for a mobile network. A 6th generation Qualcomm AI engine, 26 tera operations per second, a Snapdragon Elite gaming component, which is a 3rd generation improved Adreno GPU, up to 144 frames per second gaming on devices with the chip. A spectral ISP, so that's improved computational photography performance. It can capture photos and videos at 2.7 gigapixels per second, roughly 120 12 megapixel photos per second. Which is 35% faster. That's actually really impressive. And I think what's interesting, another thing that's interesting here, Qualcomm confirmed 14 OEMs who are launching with devices using the new chipset in 2021. Of course, there will be more, but they're just kind of announcing this right now. There's 14 on board. And, a bunch of names that you expect to see in there: Motorola, ASUS, ZTE, Xiaomi, Lenovo, LG, OnePlus, Samsung, not on the list. And so then the question becomes, wait a minute, Samsung usually uses the top of the line Snapdragon processor in their top of the line devices. Why are they not on the list? Or is that not abnormal? It's just Samsung doesn't play that game. I don't know.
I generally fall under the Samsung doesn't play that game and whenever it's an option.
Okay.
I think that's the safe bet, I think. But I guess we'll see. We'll find out. But I think generally they hold their cards close to the vest, and I feel like we've always had speculation or rumors that they're developing stuff on their own, right? And so maybe they hold off to commit until they absolutely have to. So I think that could be a possibility. So
that's true. I mean, and there also have been rumors that, the Exynos chip that they've been producing for years now and iterating on and everything, that they might have, plans or desire to make that more of a worldwide rollout. So potentially, there is also the possibility that they're not on this list because, hey, we've got our own thing and we're not doing the Snapdragon. That's the people that are like reading into the tea leaves deeply to be like, why aren't they there? That's kind of what they're thinking. But we will certainly find out. I mean, that would be a big change of direction for Samsung if they went all in on the Exynos chips worldwide, and a big loss for Qualcomm, really.
Yeah, for sure. So, all right. And then moving on, if we had done news last week instead of indulging in our 500 episodes milestone, this would have been discussed in the news block. But Google is rolling out end-to-end encryption for RCS. It requires the messages beta for now on both sides. So to have end-to-end encryption, both users need to be using the beta version of the messaging app. And once this reaches everyone and is the default, it will mean that most Android users will be protected, and that's big news for privacy. If the default messaging app using RCS does have end-to-end encryption on both sides for everyone, then that's great because it's already in place. And it uses Signal's end-to-end encryption, so for you privacy nuts to track which encryption is being used. And it's also worth noting that RCS has completed its worldwide rollout. And I know that this has happened because I've seen numerous articles explaining how to opt out of RCS, which just boggles my mind, where people, that when anything has a major rollout, you're going to see the people who say, this is how not to use it. This is why it's bad.
Yeah, of course.
But it's hard to argue once they put in end-to-end encryption. It'll be hard to argue that it's bad. Actually, in terms of going back to the evolution of messaging on the Android platform, RCS I think is a big piece of it. So it's nice to see them continuing to put kind of resources behind it.
Yeah, Steve, I was on Security Now with Steve Gibson last week while Leo was out, and he talked about this story. Like Ron said, we're a week late on this story, but that's only because we didn't really do news last week. But it's big enough news that we wanted to talk about it. And Steve was very, very positive about the fact that they were using Signal's end-to-end encryption. So that's going to make a lot of people happy, at least according to Steve anyways. We definitely have an email later on in the show that has to do with RCS and turning it off. So definitely stick around for that. But there are certainly reasons why someone might not want to opt in and check it out. I had an experience over the weekend. Duncan Jaffrey, friend of the show from Ozdroid, he reached out to me and said, hey, I've got RCS. Are you curious, how this works internationally now? And so we started messaging back and forth. And it was really weird because on my end, when I sent him messages, it said SMS sent. So it was sending via SMS. On his end, it said that he was receiving them via chat. And when he would send me a message, it said sent via chat, and I was receiving them via SMS. So I don't know what was going on there. That was really weird. I assumed that this whole chat RCS thing was a two-way, everything that I've read and know about it says that it's a two-way street. I don't know why it wasn't.
But I wonder, because my first glance is that what does it matter? You're just connecting two users. But then given how crypto is often treated by governments and things like that, I wonder if there's a set of logic based off the countries that are connecting. And if for some reason that country isn't in line with whatever the policy is, it goes straight to SMS. Although I can't imagine why Australia wouldn't be on the right side of encryption or whatnot, but that's the only thing I can think of is that, I guess to test this, we need to get users in every country and see which ones which ones connect this way and which ones don't. I'd be curious to try anybody in Canada and the UK and that sort of thing. But it's got to be some sort of global import export, that sort of level of things at play, I would guess. That's a guess. It's
just really bizarre to me. On his end, it says chat message. On my end, it says text message. And so, I mean, if that was the case, then why would he have chat on his end? And again, if it's text to me and chat to him, like that seems to be like counter to what chat even is, what RCS even is. It's two RCS-enabled devices talking to each other, but they're not.
So I will give credit to Cousin of Ja in the chat room who just said, isn't there an anti-encryption law in Australia now? And sure enough, doing a quick Google search, and Burke, I'm going to drop it in the doc. Sure enough, there's an article on the Foundation for Economic Education, fee.org, and the headline is Australia's new anti-encryption law is unprecedented and undermines global privacy.
Okay, so that's interesting. That is definitely interesting. One thing I'm not certain of is if Duncan was using the beta version of the Messages app. The beta version is required right now in order to do encrypted messaging between the two devices. I am running the beta version. So I guess maybe there's some sort of signal there that says, oh, you're on beta so we can do encrypted. They are not. Or he is on the beta version and it's encrypted, and something on the Australian side is saying, that's encrypted communication. You can't do that. I honestly have no idea. I'm totally guessing. But that's
I mean,
it
could, if he's on the beta or not, that's a factor. But then also he's an Australian, and maybe Australia is blocking it.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
Fascinating. This is definitely not a conversation for us. It's probably much more for Steve Gibson and Leo to talk about and that sort of thing. I feel like, whenever we get into encryption, I'm always like, I'll be the first to say this is out of my wheelhouse. So,
Indeed. Well, we can talk about passwords.
We sure can. And I'll tell you why we can talk about passwords, because this episode is brought to you by LastPass. And listen, when it comes to passwords and security and things like that, companies deal with it the most. Companies face cybersecurity threats no matter where employees are working. Whether they're connecting from an office or from home, the risks of cyber attacks, such as data loss and data breaches, are something companies need to plan for and work to mitigate. A solid cybersecurity strategy is arguably more important while employees are working from home, given that more factors, from the Wi-Fi network to shared devices, may be outside the direct control of IT. That's why LastPass is so crucial to protecting your business. IT and security leaders can take back control of password security. They'll have the control they need from a central dashboard. Businesses can customize admin privileges, ensuring that any given admin has only the right level of access. No matter your organization's source of truth, LastPass integrates to onboard users, sync groups, and revoke access. Access to security scores and dark web monitoring to see real-time readouts of your business's password hygiene and provide alerts to employees when credentials may be at risk. For every employee, you can view their password scores, gain access to shared accounts, monitor group memberships, and more. LastPass's zero-knowledge security model protects everyone from the individual user to the biggest organization. They allow employees to go passwordless while giving them access to the tools they need to work. LastPass ensures complete security in the cloud with strong encryption algorithms, local-only encryption, multi-factor authentication. And listen, if you work in IT, if you're an IT leader, you need to invest now in upgrading or adding security technologies to make remote work safer and more productive. LastPass is the best place to start. So don't wait until the end of the year to get strong security. Start solidifying your cybersecurity strategy with the award-winning LastPass today. Go to lastpass.com/twit to find out how they can help you. That's lastpass.com/twit. And I am a proud LastPass user. I use it in my business. I use it in my personal life. Strongly recommend LastPass. It's great. Fundamentally changed my life. Feel so secure with it. Go to lastpass.com/twit and get on board today. Thanks, LastPass.
Thank you, LastPass. Love you guys. Love what you do for my password security. All right. It's time to do a little review in the hardware section. So I can't remember, Ron. What are your feelings? What are your feels about Chrome OS and a Chromebook?
I mean, I'm generally what's the word I'm looking for? Curious. I'm Chromebook curious. I love the idea of it. I love the concept of it. I just have yet to fit it into my life because I always find that one application that I need. Like that I feel so married to Mac OS, and like I need Premiere to edit video, or I need Audacity to edit audio, or I need Photoshop to edit, those sort of stuff. And as much as I would love to be able to jump to the cloud and be completely, running, purely off of a Chromebook, I just haven't had the guts to make the leap yet.
Yeah, fair enough. You're not alone. A lot of people in that same category. I have used, the Pixelbook and the Chromebook Pixel before it since the Chromebook Pixel basically, and I went kind of all in on on the Chrome OS lifestyle there for quite a while. And I'll be honest, like coming into the work from home environment, not as much, just because like the situation is so different, right? Like I'm using my MacBook Pro to not only run the shows off of, but I'm also feeding my video and audio and recording in QuickTime and doing all this stuff. So it's kind of like I do need the extra power, but I still was given the opportunity to check out the Acer Chromebook Spin 713, which a lot of people, I don't know if you've been following any of the kind of Chromebook news this year, this is on a lot of people's top, like end of year, like top Chromebook of the year list.
I have been, Jason. That's why when I heard you had one, I was like, ooh, and got very curious. So
yeah, super solid. I have to say, like I love the Pixelbook, but when it comes to the Pixelbook, like it's super expensive, right? And then I've used a lot of the lower end Chromebooks out there, and they feel cheap. Like I'm so used to the higher quality Chromebook experience of the Pixelbook, and the Chromebook Spin 713 is kind of in my experience, and I used it for quite a while. In my experience, it's kind of the best, the best in all categories for the most part, without getting too crazy expensive. It costs $630, which for a Chromebook, I would say is more expensive than a lot of what you will find. But you end up getting just a nice design. It's a sturdy, thorough design. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily a sleek looking laptop. In some ways, it kind of feels a little dated, but they make up for it with a lot of I/O. You've got 2 USB-C ports, one on each side. I'm going to do this. Hopefully my camera will keep up with me. An HDMI port over here, a USB-A port, a micro SD card slot, a headphone jack on the other side, of course. So I'll flip it back around. Come on, you can get your focus. There you go. So you've got a lot of I/O, right? So the sleekness that I'm used to on the Pixelbook, which is really thin, you don't have that as much here, but that's just because you've got a lot of I/O that the Pixelbook does not have. I do wish it had a fingerprint sensor. Not that the Pixelbook has that, but it would just be nice to be able to do the one tap. You know, I've got that on my MacBook Pro, and ever since then, it's hard to use a laptop that doesn't allow me to just jump right in super quickly. But the outside is the outside on the bottom, anyways, is aluminum. You've got more of a polycarbonate deck on the inside, so that's kind of one of the places where they were able to get the price down a little bit. But overall, the feel of the device is really nice. It also has a 13.5-inch 2K display. I'm not going to show you my password, but I'll show you the display. It's an LCD touchscreen display. Beautiful display, super sharp, good color representation. And one thing that I really like about it is that, like, I used it outside and I got a lot of punch in the brightness out in the sun, in the sunlight. So, there are a lot of laptops that I've used outside that just don't handle the sunlight, but this one really did well as far as that's concerned. You can also see it's a 3:2 display ratio. It's kind of a square-like aspect ratio when you compare it to a lot of other laptops out there that go for the more widescreen look, which, yes, means if you're using this for media playback, you're going to, have to deal with a few more of those black bars at the top and the bottom. But I feel like the 3:2 ratio is better for productivity. It works better for me. And maybe that's just because I'm so used to it on the Pixelbook. But I really like that. And then I think what's most critical for me with Chromebooks is the quality of the keyboard, the quality of the trackpad. I feel like this is where a lot of Chromebooks totally fall flat. They're just cheap. They feel almost like toys. And here, I didn't feel like that. It's got a nice backlit keyboard, maybe a tad squishier than I'd say my preference, but plenty. Like, it's got some nice travel on it, and I did a lot of typing on this thing and was really happy with it. A huge Gorilla Glass trackpad down at the bottom. I mean, pretty well. Okay, so it's not as big as my MacBook Pro trackpad, but it felt huge enough for the size of this keyboard, let's say. And trackpads a lot of times just kind of feel plasticky and everything. The fact that this is Gorilla Glass gives it a nice solid kind of click and feel when you're dragging around on it. It feels more expensive than a lot of the other Chromebooks that I've used, and that's just because it's made better. As far as what's on the inside, it's a 10th generation Intel Core i5 processor, 8 gigs of DDR4 RAM, 128 gigs of solid state drive storage. I felt like performance-wise, this thing cruises. I even threw a bunch of tabs at it, at many different times, and it didn't really slow down for me. Nothing that I could detect anyways. There are fans underneath, so you do get a little bit of audible fan noise at times, but it was nothing that really drove me crazy or anything. It was very, very subtle, but I know some people are really sensitive to that sort of thing, so I wanted to mention it. Battery life, rock solid. In fact, I would definitely say it bested the battery life on a day-to-day perspective than my Pixelbook and my MacBook Pro, which is a 2019 MacBook Pro. Obviously, we're using these, I'm using these devices differently. I'm driving the MacBook Pro a lot more with like video and audio and stuff, but still, I was super impressed by that. It does have a 720p webcam and onboard mic, kind of as you expect a laptop nowadays to have, and as is very important in the age of Zoom and video conference calls and everything. It's fine. Nothing amazing. I wouldn't have expected it to be very amazing, to be honest. And then finally, this system or this Chromebook gets updates through June 2028. So that's not bad. Another 7.5 years of updates on this. So it's going to last you a long time. So I'd say overall, great value, especially to performance for this Chromebook. Like I said, I'm used to using a lot of Chromebooks that I'm just like, yeah, but it's not a Pixelbook. And if I didn't have the Pixelbook, I would totally use this. Like, it's a solid Chromebook, and $630 might be more than what, some people out there who have never used Chrome OS would expect to buy a Chromebook for, because there's so many in that like sub $300-$400 price range, and anytime you ever use those, you can put your hands on them, you're like, ugh, I don't want to live with this thing. This is just different. Like, it's really just a solid blend of everything that I feel makes a solid Chromebook. And it's not as expensive as what I'm used to, but I think the trade-off is fine. Like, it totally doable, and I could absolutely live with this in place of the Pixelbook. So yeah,
and that's really interesting on the price. That's really interesting on the price point, because like I bought my niece a Chromebook a couple of years ago, and it was, I was like, oh wow, it was like $249, and it was like, but it was very plasticky, and you felt the value of it. Mm-hmm. Right. And looking at the Pixelbook and the north of $1,000 kind of price tag and that sort of thing, I've wondered why there wasn't a mid-range. I feel like I'm always touting the mid-range, but why there wasn't a $600, $700-ish, slightly better than most of the Chromebooks, but below the crazy specs of that. So that seems like a nice spot to fit in for like a professional who's going to be on the road a lot, who might travel, although, nowadays, but, especially if you're, but if you're working remotely and you're in what, you're changing location a lot, things like that, you want the computer to work, to go with you. You want some ruggedness. And so like, it's good to see one come in at that price point and be impressive. So definitely worth a look.
Yeah, I mean, and especially for that price, like I fully realize too, like a lot of people are probably looking at Chromebooks and thinking, like, if you're a parent and you've got a kid who's in school right now and distance learning, you might jump right to okay, yeah, but $630 is a little bit more than I'm willing to spend on, my son or daughter for school, because there are a lot that are a lot less expensive. And I can totally understand that, especially right now. Who knows how long we're going to be distance learning, maybe not that much longer. But on the flip side of that, if it's $630 and this is a device that's going to be updated through 2028 and it's solid now, plenty of expandability, like there's just a lot of reasons that, like, okay, don't think of the sticker price at this moment for your child. They're probably still going to need this computer for however many years through high school, and it would be perfectly capable of doing the majority of what they're going to need to do in school anyways. That's the beauty of a Chromebook. I feel like it kind of locks students into the essentials of what they need out of a computer without like opening up to a lot of things that maybe parents don't want their kids to have a fully functional computer that can also play all of these games and be kind of a distraction, because that can happen as well. You don't want to go down that road as well. So maybe this keeps them more focused, and 630 spread over however many years is just fine.
Yeah.
So, yep.
Just fine. Just fine is okay. Just fine is okay sometimes.
Yeah. Well, and which is not to say that this that's the punctuation on this Chromebook is that it's just fine. It's actually really great. But as a parent, finding that point that you're like, what it does is good enough for my student or for me, and that's the eternal challenge for anyone, or for Chromebooks and Chrome OS in general, is convincing people that it is good enough for the majority of things that you probably do. Yes, it doesn't do 100%, but the 80% that it does really well. And you kind of don't need much more than that a lot of the time. Obviously, situationally, it's different between people, but that's the challenge. So the Acer Chromebook Spin 713. I liked it. You should check it out.
I like that as a review tag. I liked it, and then the opposite of that could be I didn't like it, and it's all very it's fine.
It's anyway, good. It's bad.
And in the topic of things that are good, or at least I think that are good, in terms of trends that are going to be coming in 2021 that we should be prepared for. We've been talking a lot recently about rollable phones, and there's been a lot of mystery about how they work, and we've seen renders and we've seen blueprints and patents and things like that. But after getting a good look at this video of hands-on with the Oppo X 2021 rollable phone, I'm just over the moon here. So if you were curious about exactly how the Oppo rollable phone works, and it's basically a phone that's the normal size that you would expect now, and then it expands out to the size of a tablet. This video shows that the rolling is actually motorized and happens via the push of a button. So you press the button, and it's almost like the convertible car top. Where kind of it yes. rolls out or rolls back in, right? But that's like magic, yeah. The phone goes from being skinny to being wide, and it's amazing. And it's all because the display is rolling out from the side, which is just mind-boggling. And so if there was any concern about the wear and tear on the rolling or user error kind of, causing it to be, causing it to break or whatnot, this answered my question that, it's going to be controlled. The system will control it. I push this button and it rolls out. But it also kind of takes away this kind of the possible magic of having a multiple sized phone. It looks like there's only two sizes, rolled and unrolled, right? So, which I guess, going back to our question about how the OS would handle it, that answers it pretty safely, in that there's only two aspect ratios it needs to worry about. But dang, this is a neat, cool device. And as somebody who consumes a lot of media on my phone, reads a lot on my phone, is into comics, that sort of thing. People are into games or watching videos or things like that. This could be a very cool portable device where it's in your pocket the size of a phone. And then when you're sitting on the plane or on a train or somewhere where you've got more time spent with your device, you can make it bigger. That's a pretty compelling option to have.
That is like, I'm mesmerized watching it, it roll and then retract and then roll. Credit to Sammy Tech Tips on YouTube. Want to give credit where credit is due. This is the video that we're watching here, so thank you for letting us show it here. And yeah, it's just really kind of crazy to see how this is designed. And I felt this way with the foldables, where it was like, oh man, that's really neat, but I want to get it in my hands and see how it feels, how it is to live with it. And this really seems more up my alley than the foldable approach, just because it doesn't have to be this gigantic brick. That is the trade-off for having the ability to do what it does. This thing just kind of, it's probably, I'm guessing, in the hand when it's collapsed down or when it's all folded and everything, or rolled, I guess would be the terminology. It's probably a little bigger than a normal phone because there's a lot of, mechanical stuff going on in there, but not nearly as big as like when you have a Z Fold 2 in your hand. That is that's a large phone.
Yeah, no, I mean the doubling the width of the phone because it's got to fold on top of itself. But this is all keeps it contained. And yeah, it's a little chunky. It looks a little thicker than usual and that sort of thing. But the magic option of when this thing expands out to the full size, and I mean, I too would love to get my hands on it and play with it and see how it feels. But just watching this video says, oh man, makes me think that rollable is a possibility, and rollable, and if they can get it to work at that aspect ratio, imagine bigger. You know what I mean? Imagine going laptop size or something like that. Oh, I just think the possibilities are endless here. It's great. So
yes, magic. a telescoping design that doesn't just go out one. It's like it goes out one and then it goes out another.
Yep. Just keeps on going.
You've got like just a huge widescreen for your movies. Yes. Love it. So great. All right, let's take a break, thank the sponsor, and then we will get into some app news here. This episode of All About Android is brought to you by Linode. Managing your complex cloud infrastructure should not be hard. It can be hard. It shouldn't be hard. Linode believes in cloud computing for all. They make deploying, managing, and scaling your cloud applications simple. That's why so many developers use and love Linode. You can simplify your cloud infrastructure with Linode's Linux virtual machines and develop, deploy, and scale your modern applications faster and easier. More than 800,000 developers choose and use Linode. Well, why is that? Well, they give you flat pricing across all 11 global data centers. You've got an intuitive cloud manager, a fully featured API. They have award-winning customer support. That's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, with no tiers or handoffs, regardless of your plan size. And this just enables you to do everything that you want to do as a developer. You can build your app, of course, but you can host your website even if you're not a developer, or maybe you are. Either way, you can store or back up your media. It's really like it's yours to use, and it's up to you as far as how you use it. Easily launch and enrich your developer applications, your hosted services, websites, AI, machine learning workloads, gaming services, so much possibility. You can even launch and scale in the cloud with their virtual machines. And you're going to get a $100 credit, so stay tuned to the end here to learn a little more about that. But you can use your $100 credit on S3 compatible object storage, managed Kubernetes, and really a whole lot more, in addition to shared and dedicated compute instances. So be sure to check out Linode's new YouTube channel for video tutorials. They've got security tips and more. That's at youtube.com/Linode. Bryce Adams from Meteoric says, from the start, we were looking for a partner, not a provider. Some of the larger providers see us only as a transaction. Linode is the kind of partner that will be with us from the start, today and beyond. So whether you're working on a personal project, or maybe you're managing enterprise infrastructure, you deserve simple, affordable, and accessible cloud computing solutions that allow you to take your project to the next level. Get started with Linode today. Visit linode.com/AAA and click on the Create Account button, and you'll get $100 in free credit. And to find out more, visit linode.com/AAA. That's $100 in free credit when you create your account today. Linode.com/AAA, or if you like, you can text TWiT to 474747 for direct link to the offer. We thank Linode for their support of this show. All right, we've got some cool stuff to talk about in apps. Let's do it.
So it's not quite breaking news, but it's timely news, and that it came out today. We talked about it a couple weeks ago when the nominees within the Google Play Store for their Best of Play awards for 2020 were announced a couple weeks ago. Today, Google announced the winners of the Google Play Best of Awards, and so right now the key ones to go with, we'll go with User's Choice first, because that's all of us, the users, that we all voted. Jason, you voted, right? I voted. I got the little sticker said I voted. No, wait a minute, that was a different voting. But anyway, so the User's Choice Award for Best App was Disney Plus. which I find fascinating. That's pretty cool.
Okay.
For game, it was SpongeBob Krusty Cook-Off. For movie, the User's Choice Award was Bad Boys for Life, and the book was If It Bleeds by Stephen King. So those are the User's Choice. But Google, they like to make their own picks as well. And according to Google, the best app of 2020 is an app that we've talked about a lot on this show all year. No, we haven't. It's called Luna, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly because there's a little accent above the O. But Luna, bedtime, calm, and relax. And this is basically in their own description. What is Luna? Luna is the first app that lets you quickly disconnect from a long, stressful day and get in the right mood for sleep. And they say, so it's another sleep app, right? And they say, not exactly. Luna isn't a list of direct go-to-sleep techniques, but rather a mood-altering app that prepares you emotionally for going to sleep. So there you go. Basically, it's kind of like a meditation app. Luna gives what you call a sleepscape, and it's a guided session that combines activities that are supposed to be relaxing in nature, some storytelling and audio to allow you just to shut out the world and rest your mind and get ready for sleep. I have not tried this. I don't have much problem going to sleep or staying asleep, but I know many people who do, and so hopefully this has helped people. If you look on the Google Play Store, I don't know, Burke, if you have the link or not, but I'll share it there. You can see the design of it, at least in the screenshots, seem to be very calming. They see, also very kind of fanciful. So if you're looking for the best app of 2020 according to Google, it is Luna. How am I pronouncing that? Luna.
I have no idea. Yeah, when the accent is on the second O, is that Luna? Luna? I have no idea. Okay.
So they had a bunch of other categories like personal growth apps, hidden gem apps, everyday essential apps, apps for good, apps for fun. One thing to note: the best game of 2020 is Genshin Impact by MiHoYo Limited. And they've got best innovative games, best casual games, best indie games. So a lot of stuff on there. And again, this is like, I feel like every year I say this, but the personal growth apps, the hidden gem apps, I don't know if we're not doing our job, but like I haven't heard of any of these. So it's just
we did get rid of the arena, which would be
true. We did
the place where we would have the most potential of running across some of these. It's certainly the place that I brought probably my favorite, or at least my most used app, and I mentioned it when we talked about this last time. Dolby On, love that app. It's fantastic. How do you feel about like something like this happening and like a big major player like Disney getting a Disney Plus win?
Well, hard for me to actually say anything because actually technically I'm employed by Disney, so I feel like I should just hold my opinions.
Understood. Okay. All right. Fair enough. But
how do you feel about it, Jason?
Well, as I asked that question, I realized like this is not a competition of best indie app created. It is best apps. And when you think of this year, one of the apps that everybody's talking about Disney Plus, right? From the moment it launched, so much of the content, The Mandalorian, all that stuff has drawn some really great attention to the app. So I suppose I'm not surprised. But I'm always rooting for the underdogs, right? And so sometimes when something like this happens, like no doubt, a company like Disney or a company like Microsoft, let's say, because they have the Office suite in here, no doubt they've got the resources, they've got the money, the people, the talent to create something really amazing. But there's so many other people that are just a small team who happen to create something really cool, and it's almost like impact versus innovation to like the amount of people involved. Like if one or a small team can create something that goes toe to toe with Microsoft Office, like that's really impressive. You know what I mean?
Well, and that's really why I think you've got the user choice app combined with their picks, because if you look at the best app of 2020 according to Google, it's by Luna. Bedtime, Calm, and Relax is by Luna Incorporated. They have one app. right? It is completely exactly what you're describing as the underdog. It's like they've decided to make this one app and they're making a go of it from a business standpoint. Who knows how many people are at Luna? How big that team is, but right. Now looking at the charts though, I'm looking at the top free apps in their own charts, and even on Google Play, like the top apps are Zoom, Walmart Shopping, TikTok, Disney Plus, Hulu, HBO Max, right? Amazon, Instagram, Snapchat, Netflix. It just goes on and on and on. I don't even think that there's an indie developer in this chart, at least in the top 25, at least.
Because you've
Twitter,
got however
Samsung.
many people downloading an app like Zoom, because this is just the sign of the times of where we're at. So of course those things are going to be at the very, very top of the list. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. But I will also say, like, I'm also inspired by the fact that I don't recognize a lot of the names here, because to that end, there is a lot of innovation that's being recognized, and there is the Disney Frozen Adventure in here. There is the SpongeBob and the Harry Potter and, Disney Plus, of course, Office, Microsoft and everything. But there's a lot of others that are, like you said, kind of the one-off, the person that just created something and is getting recognized for that. And that's awesome too. I think it's interesting that the best movies of 2020 top 5, Bill and Ted Face the Music was in there. It's a little, I guess somebody liked it.
It was fine.
It
was fine. It was a B at best. No, I mean, it's funny because the best movies of 2020, I think that's what's interesting is that, like, if you look at them, like Bill and Ted's Face the Music, that was a high profile nostalgic release that went digital only. Just Mercy and Miss Juneteenth were tied directly to what happened in May and June in this country and all this sort of stuff. I know, Just Mercy was offered up for free by Warner's for, during that time period. So you probably had a lot of people jumping on that. And then Onward was a Disney release, Pixar. Came out, Pixar came out on Disney Plus, and Parasite won the Oscar in February, right? So this list of top 5 movies doesn't really surprise me as a movie fan, knowing what's going on in the world in this past year. So,
yeah, indeed. Anywho, check out that list and you'll surely lose yourself. If you're bummed that we don't do the arena on the show anymore, go to this list and you've got like a month's worth of apps to check out, because they're there for a reason. So check them out.
Yep.
Google TV. This is the app. So you've got the Google Play Movies and TV app of the days of yesteryear. Well, that was redesigned to Google TV a couple of months ago, maybe a month ago. Then you also have the Chromecast with Google TV. So it's a little confusing, right? You've got Google TV, the app, and then you've got Chromecast with Google TV, which is like the new Android TV. So I'm talking about the app, first of all. It appears that Netflix is no longer accessible through the app. So the app with the redesign was really meant to be kind of like a hub, almost to a certain degree, kind of like Chromecast with Google TV, like the Google TV that's the replacement of Android TV, where it pulls in all the services and apps that you subscribe to and that you use, and then it creates a seamless kind of like interface or a display for them. So you don't have to go to a million different apps to get to your content. You just go to this one and it's like, oh yeah, and this show's on Netflix and this one's on Amazon Prime, blah, blah, blah. And you can just go there and jump right in from there. Well, Netflix has apparently, and I tested on mine, it's not there for me, no longer accessible through Google TV. And it's hard to know exactly why, but it does kind of sound like this is a Netflix move, not a Google move. I doubt Google was like, we don't want Netflix in our app. I think Netflix, from what it sounds like, it really probably wants people to be inside of their experience and inside of their app in order to kind of pick through the media, which is just kind of a bummer. As you know, as we're all to a certain degree becoming more and more cord cutters and all realizing the challenges of subscribing to these different services and then wanting to watch that one thing that's over there and that other thing that's over there. Then you have a trillion for your streaming services. And it's so much nicer when you can go into that one and go everywhere, and to not have like literally one of the major streaming services offered there is just kind of a bummer.
It's baffling to me sometimes the decisions these companies make. I mean, I don't know if there's a monetary commitment that Google's looking for from Netflix, and that's why they didn't do it, or if it's just out of spite, or if it's just to your point about like we only want people to be on our platform or whatnot. But it's like the fragmentation we've seen of streaming services and entertainment options is just going to continue. Like it's going to be like messaging, where it's going to become user hostile if you can't find what you want to watch. Like this thing that used to be so kind of freedom laden, and with television, you just turn on the TV and go to the channel you want. And now it's like this is why we'll have the one app to rule them all kind of solution, which sucks. So. Yeah, totally agree. I should also mention that this is the same on Apple devices. So Netflix is apparently absent from the TV app on Apple devices. So it really does seem like a Netflix thing, a Netflix decision. Yeah. I hope that doesn't hit the Google TV interface, because I have, I installed the Google TV interface from the Chromecast with Google TV on my NVIDIA Shield TV. That's kind of confusing, I realize, but I did that, and it does the kind of interplay or the interactivity between our services into one seamless experience. It's actually really awesome how it does it. So I hope Netflix doesn't suddenly disappear from there too. So far, so good though. Indeed. Alrighty. So speaking of Google and services and things like that, it's been a couple of weeks, and so I thought it would be a good time for us to check in on the YouTube Music, Google Play Music transition. Right. So Jason, a couple of weeks ago, you were dealing with this on your own, correct? You were figuring out how to manage your system and all that sort of stuff. Are you in a better place than where you were? Or?
Yeah, so I went through the process of downloading the Google Play library and then putting it on my Plex server and having it accessible through Plex Amp, right? That's what it's called, Plex Amp. Yeah. And yes, I'm happy about that. I haven't really tapped into it very much because I'm always just still here, and there's a certain like library of music that's there, and then I stream still from a music service. So on a day-to-day perspective, I haven't really leaned into it very much. But I'm happy that it's there, and I'm happy that I own it now, like that I'm hosting it. So kind of both sides, I guess, right now.
Cool. So for me specifically, and I'm browsing around to YouTube Music because I just realized there's something I wanted to show you. For me, I was already where you got to, so like to a certain degree. So my problem was a little more unique in that I used Google Play Music, and I started by uploading my entire library that still is on my hard drive that I still own. And when I would buy new music, if I would buy a record, I would always get a download code. And as opposed to adding it in Google Play Music, I would download the MP3s, put them on my hard drive, upload them to Google Play Music, and then they were there, right? And so that was a nice system. And in doing so, I was able to have the majority of my library already up and available on Plex for use in Plex Amp. But my problem became a little unique in that there was a bunch of songs and a bunch of albums that I had added in Google Play Music to my library purely not by purchasing it, but just by saying add to my library, and like it's available on the streaming service. Here's this record I want, add to my library. Great, it's there. With Google Play Music going away, I never bought that record, so I don't have those MP3 files. So there was a chunk of my library that was unavailable to me to make local. And so then I was like, all right, well, how am I going to figure this out? And so I went to Takeout, like you suggested, Jason, and I went to download my Google Play Music library, and I chose to give me everything. So it was going to give me all the files again, but it would also give me the list of everything I added to my library and all this sort of stuff in a CSV format that I could, parse and all that sort of thing. Well, I put in that request for Google Takeout, and it said that it would run on November 17th, and I would get a notification when it finished. And I've never gotten that notification. As far as I can tell, it never ran. So now I need to figure out what happened there. What? Yeah. But what I did discover was Google Play Music is still live on the web.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go to play.google.com/music, there's a good chance you can still get to your library. And I don't know if that's for you, Jason, or not, but like for me on the web, I was able to get to Google Play Music. My entire library is there. And what I was able to do was, and now, Burke, if you want to throw up the screenshot I sent you, you are able to sort your library via the browser. In the upper right-hand corner, there's a little next to the number of songs. There's a little drop-down, and there are three options in the drop-down: to show all music, to show music purchased and uploaded, or added from my subscription. And sure enough, I clicked on added from my subscription, and that filtered that list to, for me, out of 18,000 plus songs in my library, to about 2,000 songs. So I'm like, great. Here's the list of this is the list that I need. So then I was like, all right, well, great. Well, now what? So what I did was I sorted it by album, and then I took a screenshot of the entire page, and I used the Chrome extension. I used the Chrome extension that I use called Go Full Page. And what it is it's a full page screen capture. So it will scroll down and continue capturing the screen as you scroll. And so what it did was it scrolled through every screen to capture all 2,000 songs that I'd added to my library. And now I have like 10 PNG files of this infinite scroll of my browser. But I can at least see all the songs that I added to my library. And basically what I'm going through is I'm just going album by album, going, okay, is this something I want to own? If yes, then go buy it. If no, then move on. Right. And so it's a very manual. It will be a very manual process, but at least I could get that information that I wanted out of it, which was important, which was my whole problem with the entire thing. So
at least you have access to that information. That's an interesting find. I didn't know that you could do that, but I'm looking at it right now. And yes, That's great, because then I don't lose all of those albums that I added to my library from the streaming service that I would seemingly lose once I'm away from here. Although I guess YouTube Music would still have access to that. Like they transfer that over. But then the question is, am I sticking with YouTube Music? And I still don't know.
Right. So the assumption for me is that I'm not. Yeah. The assumption for me is that I'm not sticking to YouTube Music. That ideally, what I would like is to be completely local. Use Plex amp. Use the app when I'm not home, and just use that. And part of it is to put my money where my mouth is and support the artists and the albums that I get and all that sort of stuff. So that is definitely for me. And yeah, it did. You're right. It did. My library did transfer in YouTube Music. So if I added it in Google Play Music, it is there in YouTube Music, but I don't own it. And if I get rid of YouTube Music at some point, I won't have it anymore. So going back to your topic of ownership, this is really the best way to do it. So
yeah, interesting.
Yeah,
that's a cool discovery. Nice. I'm gonna have to pour through that. It's a huge list as I cycle through it. But yeah,
I was relieved. I was relieved that of 18,000, it was only 2,000 for me. I was like, this could have been a lot worse. So
manageable.
Yeah. But and then just to follow up on one little postscript, I did use YouTube Music this past weekend because it was Thanksgiving and now the holidays have started. For those of you at home, you have Thanksgiving and then immediately the next day is when you can start listening to Christmas music. So Friday after Thanksgiving, I started listening to Christmas music, and I was actually out at my sister's, and so I didn't have my computer, whatever. Plex amp wasn't working because I didn't do it. But I was like, all right, let me pull up YouTube Music and let me see if it ported over my Christmas playlist from Google Play Music that I've been using for the past 8 years, right? And sure enough, that playlist was there, but I got to tell you, it is a mess. Right. And this is where the music snob OCD gets in check, because for example, on that I have the Phil Spector's A Christmas Gift to You record, which is my favorite, one of my top 10 records of all time. Christmas music notwithstanding, it's like my number one Christmas record of all time. And even though in Google Play Music I have all the songs from that album, when it ported over to YouTube Music, it just pulled the title and the artist and from any album it could find. So like I've got White Christmas by Darlene Love from 21 Classic Christmas Favorites. and Sleigh Ride by various artists from Rock and Roll Christmas. Like it's a mess now. And so like the OCD in me, like I have to go clean this up because then they all need to be, I need the same album art. I need it all to be the same. This is more of a me problem than a YouTube Music problem, but still it's that idea of matching and they're just taking the song and the artist and matching to whatever comes up first. And even in this particular case that I'm pretty sure this is a record that I had uploaded. And so they're trying to match it to what's in the service as it is. And some of the songs aren't available on the service. It really is a mess. So,
that is annoying.
Yeah, this has been the first playlist that I've touched with YouTube Music, and as I scroll through it, you just see different, because so many songs get re-released and put on different records and things like that. Any of them, like I have a Bing Crosby record, and it's got like 6 different album arts because it's pulling from different records, different releases, which is frustrating. So.
That is super frustrating, and I totally get you on the music snob and like organization aspect. Like it's a very personal experience, if you've got a lot of music and you're used to organizing your music online from especially for you and I dating back to like the iTunes days where that was just the way that you did it, or you ordered it yourself on your hard drive, or however, like we've got certain systems, a certain kind of organizational method that goes along with this. And when this transition happens and it forces you outside of that, and not for any good reason, right? Like it's not like it improves it any. It just makes it more difficult. It's like a double whammy. So, yeah, lame. It is indeed a great album, by the way. I totally.
It's literally one. It's like not only great Christmas record, but great album, period. And say what you will about Phil Spector, made some bad choices later on in his life.
Sure.
But God damn, that guy could produce a record and make drums sound amazing. And so Wall of Sound.
Indeed. Love the Wall of Sound. All right. Up next, we're going to get to some viewer feedback. So if you want, you can always be part of our feedback section, AAA@twit.tv, or leave us a voicemail, 347-SHOW-AAA. First email is from Herb, who says, a tech question regarding Android messages. Default is now RCS. I want to set the default as SMS, as we often don't have data up here, and RCS won't send without data. SMS will send with a barely existing signal as long as the wind blows the right way. Search is coming up with all sorts of things, not what I'm looking for. I have a Pixel 4a all updated. I'm glad to surrender my data to Google for the coherent and cohesive structure. If I can't get SMS through Google Messages, recommendations for an SMS app. So I did my own kind of searching around, but before I did, like the first solution here, I think is the most obvious one. And I'd be surprised if you didn't already check this out, but RCS is enabled through a feature called Chat. So it's a feature in Android messages. That's what it's labeled as, is Chat. So if you go into Android messages and go into settings, chat features, and then deactivate enable chat features, that should do what I'm understanding you are talking about. That should disable RCS on your device and force everything to go through SMS. I could be missing something, but that's what I'm guessing you're asking about. If you don't want to go that route, you still want RCS and chat features, but you also want to be sure that you can send SMS when you want to, right? And that won't automatically fall down onto RCS when you don't have data, and so it just lingers or whatever. Android Police has an article on another solution. If a chat message that you've sent is stuck in send because you don't have the data and it's trying to RCS chat that, you can tap the message. That'll pull up a menu, a small menu, and then select send as text, SMS, MMS instead. That's the option. Send as text instead. And that should force that particular message to send through as SMS. I guess it just depends on how much text messages you're sending at that point. It might be kind of annoying to do that every time, in which case I just say deactivate RCS and switch it into SMS only mode.
Now that said, if you don't care about RCS and you just care about SMS and you don't feel allegiance to Google and don't want the Messages app, there are so many SMS apps out there.
That's
right?
True.
Like in terms of the alternative, I mean, like you cannot go wrong with Textra, Chomp, Pulse. Right, there are so many SMS apps out there that don't even touch RCS and just stick to standard SMS, MMS, and you won't miss a beat if you move off of Google Messages and use one of those. If you're not worried about RCS, right?
Right. Yep. I mean, I'm just doing a quick search here, and find a trusted source. I suppose you might believe us to be a trusted source, and if so, thank you. But it's been a while since I've used a third-party SMS app, so it's hard for me to say use this one because I've been using Android Messages for a long time now. But like XDA has a really good walkthrough. Do a search for best text messaging apps for Android. Yep. I trust XDA, and that'll give you some options, anyways. I will say that. Before I switched to Google Messages now it's been a couple of years, but before Google Messages was any good, I was loyal to Textra. I love Textra. I thought that was great. For those of you who are worried about encryption and privacy, Signal is a private messaging app, and that has you can use Signal as an SMS app. So if you're already using Signal for privacy reasons, you could just leverage that for its SMS. Also, if you're on Facebook, the Facebook Messenger app handles SMS as well too. So you might already have some alternatives that you just never tried as an SMS app. So, but yeah, I agree with you, Jason. Just search best text app for Android, and you'll find. Android Authority, XDA. I'm sure Android Police has one. I mean, that's a pretty standard SEO laden search term, so you can probably find some stuff to check out. I would recommend Textra personally, but so there you go. I hope that's helpful, Herb.
Cool. All right, on to our next email, which comes from Julio. And Julio says, with the end of unlimited uploads to Google coming up next year, I've been thinking of a way to find a replacement for Google Photos. I usually download all my pictures to my external hard drive, 2 backups, one connected to my computer, the other disconnected. Then I upload the photos via the Google Photos desktop software. I do this so I keep an original copy of all my photos. I also use Plex for my movie and music collection, as you guys do. So upon my research to find a new solution for Google Photos, I didn't realize Plex has an equivalent Photos feature. So I was hoping you could let the listeners know on the podcast know about this, because I know it will be helpful to a lot of people in a similar situation. Also, I forgot to mention it's a Plex Pass feature only. And first off, if you're using Plex and you don't have Plex Pass, you're just and Plex has been a sponsor of the network, and we've talked about this before. But I mean, I've been a Plex Pass member since they rolled it out, and it's really the only way to go Plex. So I just want to put that out there. Personally, I would suggest being a Plex Pass user, because what that gives you is it does give, basically Plex becomes this fantastic media server, which, Julio's absolutely right. It's not just movies and TV. It's not just music, but also supporting photos. And so if you want to get off the cloud in the same way that we're getting off the cloud on the music side of things and keep your collection of photos local and get off Google Photos, Plex is a great way to do it. They don't have a dedicated photo app the way Google Photos does. You still use the Plex app to access the photos on your phone and whatnot, but it's a great way to make your photos accessible when you're not at the computer. Jason, are you aware of any other local photo apps that does kind of what Plex does, like that allows that?
I'm not,
I can't think of it
because I haven't really looked into it, but Plex is my option for this as well. I should mention, first of all, photos, hosting your photos on a Plex server is not in and of itself a Plex Pass only feature. You can do that if you aren't a Plex Pass subscriber. There's certain aspects of it that require Plex Pass. For instance, the automatic tagging. This is my understanding anyways. The automatic tagging of photos, that is a Plex Pass only option. So you can host your photos on there just the same as you could as a free user, your video and your audio. It's just they have expanded feature sets if you're Plex Pass. That's my understanding anyways. Beyond that, I should also mention that I'm going to be this week's episode of Hands on Android is going to be exactly this. Like I'm literally, after this show is done recording, I record the rest of that, and that's going to be Thursday's episode. So twit.tv/HOA, and I'll show you how to do this, how to get your photos down from Google via the takeout service, how to move that onto a hard drive and set it up as a Plex server. on a device that you might have. I have the NVIDIA Shield TV that I run my Plex server on. And then also how to set up on your phone in the Plex app the automatic image and video uploading. So it basically does the same thing that Google Photos does. And you can isolate that to either only when there's Wi-Fi or Wi-Fi and mobile. But you can say any images and video that I take on this phone going forward automatically get uploaded to my Plex server, and I own them locally as, maybe that's a backup. You're going there as well as Google Photos, whatever. But that's just another place for it to go. So
cool. And there's a bunch of other, and you're going to see this, emerge for sure. But like, I just did a quick search for like Google Photos server alternative. And like, there's a software package called Photo Prism, which is basically like Plex for photos. So basically it's a local self-hosted photo server that you can access via mobile and all this sort of stuff and store your photos. So you're going to start seeing this stuff emerge as the Google Photos switchover starts to happen next year. And I think there are gonna be a lot more options next year for this. So.
Yeah, indeed. A lot more people are becoming interested in knowing how to do this. And it's also just gotten a lot easier to do this. So that's good. This sort of thing used to be really, really complicated. And now it's not as complicated. So hope that's helpful. And thank you for the recommendation, Julio. All right, it's now time for the email of the week. And this time it's Alex. Hello, Alex. Alex writes, on episode 500, you talked about the green bubble effect. So I wanted to provide you some feedback from another country. I'm French. Here, market share for iOS is 19.4% and Android is 80.6%. Source, Kantar World Panel Q3 2020. Thank you for notating that. I appreciate that. So Android is the clear leader in France. I'm an app developer and work with many different kinds of people. That's designers, engineers, sales agents, ... And even if most of them use Apple devices, I never noticed or heard about ostracization. I can't say that word. Ostracization? Ostracization. There you go. Thank you, Burke. Ostracization of green bubble people here. I think the main reason is iMessage is not the holy grail of message apps in my country. The go-to app for messaging in France is WhatsApp. Everyone is using it, and group messages work flawlessly with WhatsApp, whatever the OS you're using. The only exception is teens. They mostly use Discord these days. And it works okay on older or cheap devices too, as a majority of users don't use a flagship phone. And so, Alex, thank you for writing in. I know you were writing in for so many people who were watching or listening to last week's episode, because I saw a little bit of that in chat as well, where people were like, what is this stuff? This is such a U.S. Centric thing, which, after all, we are in the U.S., so that is our universe. That is our world when it comes to messaging. But yeah, you're right. Like, it is very much a US thing for iMessages to be so dominant here in so many other places. And I know, Ron, you're a huge fan of WhatsApp, but so many other places, yep. WhatsApp's where it's at.
Yeah, I mean that's part of why Facebook acquired them, was because they had such a strong international audience. It took much longer for WhatsApp to actually gain traction here in the States, because it was it was kind of relegated in the same kind of language as WeChat and those kind of international messaging apps. But WhatsApp really, it's great. I mean, it's funny because I was having conversations over the Thanksgiving weekend about messaging and how it works and what the good ways to do it, and the argument for and mainly it was around Android ostracization. There you go. That's how you say it, Jason. Because in this particular case, my sister and all of her coworkers, they're all on iOS, and they're angry at her for being on Android because she's a green bubble and because she's not on iMessage. And I was like, get them on WhatsApp. She's like, no, they want me to change OSs. And it's like, and I just find it hysterical. I made this point how all this, purported good that Apple has done in the world over its, 40-year history or however long it's been around, that with just the one stroke of making Android text bubbles green has, introduced a new level of classism, or introduced a new level of kind of social discord that I can't imagine aligns with their corporate mission, right, of giving back to the world, right? It's just a little too selfish in that. But WhatsApp is just such a great alternative because Wi-Fi, at least now, especially when we're home, Wi-Fi is way more ubiquitous than sometimes you might not have a good cell service, or SMS doesn't go through, or we've complained about the data constraints of MMS and like the video crunching that Apple to Android video sends do and things like that. None of those problems happen on WhatsApp because it's all data based. It's all it's an IP based communication platform versus relying on decades old protocols. So yeah, I'm a firm believer in it. So yeah.
There you go. So thank you so much.
I had another interesting note, by the way, after being home from Thanksgiving with my sister and her Pixel. She's the Pixel 3. She wasn't getting SMS messages at all. Like her my nieces were texting her. She wasn't receiving any of them. She was sending message out. They were being sent, but she wasn't receiving anything. And I opened up her app and I opened up her phone. I started looking at it, and she had her work profile active. And that blocked all receiving of SMS messages to her personal profile. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, I'd never saw that before. I thought it was something with RCS. I was trying to disable RCS. I was trying to look in the settings for something like that. And then I was like, work profile. I'm like, you use your phone for work? And she's like, no, I hate that. I never touch that. I'm like, well, you turn the work profile on and it blocked all your SMS messages. So if she
good investigative work though. Yeah.
Thank you. If she was on WhatsApp, she wouldn't have had that problem. So
yeah, interesting. I'm not sure I would have even known to search for that. So that's good work on your part. Alex, thank you so much for writing in and being our email of the week. That was like a false start. But you are not a false start, Alex. You're the email of the week. There we go. All right, we've reached the end of this episode of All About Android. Ron, it was fun to just hang out with you, man. Thank you.
Amazing. The first time in 500 episodes, you and I podcasting together alone, just the two of us. So.
Kind of weird. Kind of strange that it's never happened before, but I'm happy that it did tonight. What do you want to plug today?
So follow me on Twitter and Instagram at RonXO. Check out Scorbit.io for my pinball company, which is pretty cool. But I also podcast on the side over with my good old pals over at iFanboy. Head over to iFanboy.com, where we released this month's Mediasplode, which actually came out. It's in November's, but it came out last week, so it's still in November. But there we're talking about our favorite streaming services and our top 5 Christmas movies to watch, as well as a great discussion about movies as to, if a movie doesn't appear in the theater and is streaming, is it still a movie or not? I'm shocked I had to have that conversation, but apparently some people think that it needs to be in the movie theater for it to actually be a movie, which I think is bananas. But go listen to us argue about that. So it's always fun.
I can kind of understand why someone might think that, but I have to compare it to the days of straight to video or straight to DVD and being like, oh, well, that's not a real movie. It didn't go to the movie theater. It went straight to DVD. It wasn't good enough for the theater.
That was the point of the argument, was that, watching movies on Netflix or first run movies on Netflix or on other things, that they just feel like TV movies because you're just watching them on TV. And I was like, yeah, there's completely a difference between the theater experience and the home experience. But if you took a movie that you saw in the theater and watched it at home, would you feel the same way? Or if you took the movie that you watched at home and instead erased that experience and watched it in a theater, would you feel differently? We definitely mix the delivery platform with the enjoyment of the property, which I think is just baffling and crazy. But that's why we podcast. It's for crazy ideas to talk about. So
so true. All right, thank you, Ron. This is a lot of fun. Also, big thank you to Victor and thank you to Burke, both folks working behind the scenes, Sometimes we hear Burke on the show like we did today, but lately we don't get to hear so much from Victor because he's not in the studio. We did last week, so if you missed last week's episode, make sure and check it out. Victor got some prime time placement in that episode, but they both make this show happen behind the scenes, and we really appreciate that you guys do what you do, so thank you. twit.tv/HOA for Hands on Android. I give that to you not because I have a new episode from last week, because I don't, because it was Thanksgiving, but because if you want to figure out and find out for yourself how to create your own photo cloud using Plex, you'll want to check it out this Thursday, twit.tv/HOA, and I will have an episode all about that. I'll show you how to do it. Also, twit.tv/store. If you're thinking about a holiday gift item for that Android fan, particularly that all about Android fan in your life, you should go to twit.tv/store. And in fact, if they're a Twit fan, you're going to find a lot of stuff there for anyone who likes the Twit shows. You can find lots of merchandise, lots of cool stuff, twit.tv/store. You can even find some masks, and that'll encourage you to wear a mask so that you save your life and others, because it's very important. I want you all to live long, prosperous lives and continue watching and listening to this show. That's it for this week. We publish every Tuesday evening, late in the evening. twit.tv/AAA is the show page on the web, so you can subscribe to audio, video, link out to YouTube, however you like it. We offer it to you there, twit.tv/AAA, and that is it for this episode of All About Android. We really hope, Flo, that you feel better and that we'll see you next week. We'll see all of you next time on All About Android. Bye, everybody.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I am Ant Pruitt, host at TWiT TV. Got a question for you. Have you gotten tired of how bad your photos are looking every time you post them to Instagram? Better yet, have you gotten yourself a new camera and you can't quite figure out why the images just don't look that good? Well, I have a solution for you. It's my show, Hands on Photography. Each and every Thursday, I sit down and share different tips and tricks that are going to help make you a better photographer and a better post processor. So subscribe today at twit.tv/hop to learn more.